Oh my
So I
goodness.
feel like I'm always choking.
I just cut mine off not too long ago. So I went from down my back, the collarbone cut, and it was a change. Oh, but man, I love it.
Yeah, I used to do it like every summer. I would chop it short and then grow it back out, but I was like, it's not really keeping me warm in the winter.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we'll just leave it for a little while. Hey, friends, welcome to the library. Welcome back to my podcast. I'm super excited. Today with me, I have my friend V. We're going to be chatting about all things bookish things again, as always. But yeah, V, tell us, have you always been reading or did you come in later in life? Kind of about your journey.
Um, I've actually always been reading. When I was younger, like young, I actually learned how to read off of those little Disney cardboard books.
Ooh.
Yeah, and my mom and I used to sit there and we would just read. And honestly, I'm pretty positive I memorized the books. I didn't actually learn from them, I memorized them. But I can remember my mom being so excited about it. And then I just kind of kept up with it as I went through school, and through school they had a AR. I don't know if everywhere has
Hmm.
that, but it's accelerated reader. And you would read books, test on them, and then you'd get points, and you could redeem those points for different gifts and stuff like that. So that it was always kind of like a competition type thing. You could get like the highest, you could be the kid that has the highest points, and so you had bragging rights. And
Oh, yeah.
so it was always one of those things. So I kind of kept up with it there. Um, and then in high school, I have a lot of trauma um, from my young teen years up until about 18 or so. And reading was kind of just my escape. Um, I was able to kind of just get away from everything that was reality. I was able to find things that just I could pretend I was there. I could, so and so could be my best friend, and it was just it was a way of coping. And so I kind of got stuck with it and just kept going and reading. And I actually was a teen mom, fresh out of high school, had my first child, and then right after that, literally exactly 1 year later, I had my second child. And so my now husband and I, him and I, he's same dad. We've been together since high school. Um, Him and I ended up going through the whole typical, you know, teen parent struggles and all the things. So I eventually reading ended up becoming a back burner item. And I never really, it was one of those things where I never really realized it until I finally picked it back up. Um,
Mm.
Life was just going on. There were other things going on. You know, we were struggling to make ends meet, figuring out what we were going to have for dinner that night. Just the typical life things. And reading just, first of all, I we couldn't afford nice thing like well, things like that, like books and stuff like that. I didn't know back then about any kind of Kindles or Nooks and stuff like that. So I didn't have, I just couldn't read as far as I was concerned. I just couldn't read. I didn't have the time for it, nor the funds and the resources for it. So um, it took a back burner, and it was was it last year? Probably was last year, maybe a little bit over a year ago. Um, I ended up picking up reading again. My mother-in-law passed away October of it's what 24, so of October 22. I had to think about that. October 22. It's been a little over a year that she passed away, and it was incredibly unexpected. And it we took a really that was hard on us, and it was one of those things where I was like, dang. It kind of put things into perspective where I was like, I'm not really living for myself. I'm literally just living on autopilot, kind of living how I feel like I'm supposed to be. And I was just super hyper focused on being a mom and losing myself. And so I kind of took this major, let me redo how I do things, because I don't want to it's so morbid, but I was like, I don't want to unexpectedly go and only be known for being my kids' moms.
Yeah.
And so I started reading again, picked it back up, and I regret ever putting it down. It's like it's just I'm right back to it's like I know it was like catching up with an old best friend, and I just never skipped a beat.
Those are great.
Yeah,
Yeah. I
yeah,
feel that too. And I feel like you have that, like, from what I can see in the community, you have this distinction of like I use it to escape in some way, form, or fashion, or I have, or like it's a version of therapy for me. Because escapism is like right there with therapy. That's typically what happens. You're either avoiding or you're addressing, but or it's just like a hobby. Like,
yeah,
it's a hobby for everyone else too, but for, like, for you, it's just a hobby, and then for this other side, it's like, it's my everything. Like, if I wasn't doing it, there would be part of me that's missing or something, like, seriously wrong. Like, for me, it's kind of similar. Like, it's my therapy, but it's also the reason I need therapy sometimes. But it's definitely, like, one of those, if I wasn't doing it all the time, like, one, you learn things when you're reading, even if you're not reading nonfiction. Like, there are certain ways of connection and other things that you learn, communication, all of that. And it was like if I wasn't reading nose in a book all the time, even if it's not necessarily, educational material, um, but but it's just one of those like if I wasn't, I would be like watching trash TV. And
I'm
when
just
I say trash, I mean like
it's my husband. He just woke up. He's like, "What are you doing?" Sorry.
It's good. But no, like trash TV, like things that you just put on to put on. You're not even really watching or like scrolling, like doom scrolling on social media. Like, yes, social media is fun, but the type of issues that you can get trying to conform from society while scrolling and just being stuck in social media pages, like it's so much it's bad.
Yeah, no,
So bad.
and I've definitely there's been points where I've laid there and for hours I've just aimlessly scrolled, and there's been times where I don't even know that I'm actually looking at what I'm scrolling through. I feel like it's just I'm literally just doing the motion of scrolling,
Mhm.
and it's so much time that's wasted. And when you look at it in hindsight and you're just like, there's nothing I can show for that. It's not like I can, oh, did you see so and so's uncle's aunt's twice removed did that? Like that that contributes nothing. That contributes
Mhm.
nothing. But the coolest thing about, replacing that with a book, whether it's fiction, nonfiction, whatever it is, you know, it's one of those things where it's like you can, oh my gosh, I was reading this, and you can still turn that into something like, oh,
Mhm.
that, they were arguing back and forth, but there was this interesting way that the person was like, no, we need to address this, and you can still have really great takeaways even from, stories that aren't even real. And so it's it's definitely one of those things where there's always a takeaway regardless of what the storyline is. Even in even in those naughty spicy books, there's takeaways
Mhm.
in there.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I that's one of those, like, um my work does a book club as well. So on top of, the naughty spicy bits, um, I read a lot of, like, Never Lose a Customer Again, The Gifts of Imperfection, things like that. We've read a couple different Brené Brown books, which, by the way, if you're on any kind of healing journey or want to go on a healing journey, you feel like you may need a little bit of cleansing of the soul, Brené Brown is amazing. She can be a little controversial in the business world as far as things that she's personally done, but I find a lot of her books really touch me. Like I read hers, and then Pastor Michael Todd, he has a couple. The most recently was Damaged but Not Destroyed, and you can read it not from necessarily from a Christian view and still get a lot of meaning out of it. It's about healing your inner trauma. But
I'll have to look
between yes. Yeah.
I'll have to look at I've been doing I don't know how to say her last name, so I'm gonna try, but I think it's Jen Sincero.
Oh,
Sincera,
yeah.
is
Mhm.
the You Are a Badass
Mhm.
writer, and I've been reading it's the one, the You Are a Badass, how to, oh goodness, it's a longer title and I don't have it in front of me, but at work every day I start my day with reading a chapter, and that's how I start my day, because it gives me that, like, yeah, you are a badass,
Mhm.
it just
Yep.
gives me that that I need. And I ended up getting all her other ones, um to out of that badass series, so that way I can read all of those as well. So yeah, that's a good one too for growth and self-help, because she's very to the point.
Mhm.
There's been people who are like, I don't like her reading because, you know she kind of, I could see where the vibe of, she minimal, like, you get that vibe of depression and mental health kind of being minimalized, where it's like, get off your ass and do something, because not everybody can literally just do that. But
For sure.
and I can get that, because I have depression and I have anxiety, so I do know that there are, but I don't take it in that perspective of her being like, your mental health is just an excuse. Like, I don't take it that way. I take it, when I read her books, I take it like a friend who's like, okay, let's go. You can't keep doing this. Like, we gotta
Yeah.
gotta fight the good fight. That's kind of how I take it. So that's a good one also. I recommend it for sure.
Yeah. So, like, with those, like, I tell people, yes, you're not gonna, like, when you're reading the fiction versus the nonfiction or the self-help or whatever, the two, like, upfront messages are not the same. Like, obviously, if I'm reading a Beauty and the Beast retelling, like, I'm there for some romance too. And you may get a hint of that talking about someone and their wife or whatever in a nonfiction, but like you get more straight up facts. Like they're just telling you what it is and what they do to fix it. Whereas in something that's fiction, it's like, oh, well, these are the presented issues, but it's like you're getting them through two actual people as an example, like one massive example instead of just being like, here's what's happening.
Yeah.
Which sometimes some people need that workaround. Like, not everyone can take everything up front like an info dump. Some people need to go, okay, give me a second. Like, I need to kind of think about that. And when you get so much involved into an example like that, you're feeling it.
Yeah.
You can feel the tension, the way the writer wrote these in between these two characters, just like if you were in real life and you walked into a room and felt the tension. It's like that. Like those emotions are drawn out of you.
Yeah.
And I feel like reading versus like watching trash TV or something, and someone somewhere is probably going to get like, well, that's not how that works. But I feel like it helps with your imagination and your creativity because a lot of people stop reading as they get out of school, and as they get older they read less and less for like I see nowadays it's kind of hard to see a kid with a book. They like iPads and things like that, but when you do, you notice that the majority of them stop reading outside of like maybe middle school,
Hmm.
and they're reading for classes instead of for fun when they get into high school and college. Well, of course, college is like been there, done that. It's obsessive.
Oh,
But like those who grew up like with that nurtured in them when they're reading as young and they continue throughout, um, I feel like their creativity, like people don't lose their imagination. You see, as people get older, they lose a piece of their creativity and their imagination. And I feel like it has a lot to do with like TV and books, and how, like, when you're reading, you have to picture it yourself. Like, it's something that if you really want to be able to see it, you would picture it yourself, whereas TV just is like gives it to you.
yeah.
Like you don't have to come up with your own feel of what did their hair look like, what did this tension feel like? You just see it all. It's just given to you. And like, of course, I love plenty of books that were turned into screen, TV, or actual movie. Like there are plenty of them that I love. The Hunger Games is one of them, although as always, like Hunger Games and Twilight, pieces are missing out of the book, and that's okay. I mean, you can't get everything, but it's just one of those, like, I love seeing it because I feel like I haven't lost my creative side. I have a lot of people go, "Oh, you're so creative. I could never." Like I started making bracelets and stuff for Readers Take Denver. I'm so excited. But I feel like there are some people who are like, "I just don't know what beads to put together." And I'm like, "I'm just stringing colors along. I don't care what it looks like. Like it's
Just
just
roll with.
fun." Yeah, like I mean, I alternate colors or I'll go and like try to put together like a shade variant where it goes light, dark, light, and like makes a circle when you put it on. Or, I mean, like if there are certain colors that I know an author has like in their background edit for Facebook, or like that's the kind of the theme for one of their books, I'll like string those together, maybe in the order of the series if it's a series, like things like that. I'm
Yeah.
like, and it's not like I create. There are bottles at the top of the shelf. I might those up there, they're like macrame or
Uh,
not macrame, they're like a Mod Podge.
oh yeah.
But, stuff like that, people are like, "I don't even know what I would put on it." My coworkers, when I was making one of them, they were like, "I don't see it coming together." And I'm like, you gotta have the vision." I'm like, "That's just gone from younger generation."
Yeah.
Makes me sad.
It's definitely sad to see because, you know, it's so so my husband kind of reads, but he's not as big of a reader as I am.
Yeah.
Uh, and there's been a lot of conversation about the It Ends With Us movie,
Mm,
and I am so excited to see that come to fruition and to be a movie. Just that's cool. But one of the biggest things for me in that is I love Blake Lively. I'm not familiar with the male lead in that movie. I'm not familiar with him, so I've heard he's great. But eh, they are just not they are just not what I imagined in my head reading
yeah.
that book. I don't really know what I imagined. Um, because I'm one of those people where when I read, like it's there and I'm picturing it in my head, and I've got the whole movie scene, I've got the whole scene going on in my head. But if I were to try and specifically tell you what one person looked like versus the other person, I can't necessarily verbalize that.
Mhm.
But when I see somebody else's depiction of it, like the cast for It Ends With Us, I'm like, no, see, that's not what I imagined. So
Mhm.
I'm excited to see what they take out of the books, how the interpretation of that is.
Yeah.
Um, but I am I'm hoping that when I see the movie, the characters that or the cast that was, what am I trying to say? Who was cast for those characters?
Mhm.
I'm hoping that the visual will kind of mesh with the characters better when I see the movie and I see how, specifically how they are with the mannerisms and, different things like that to see if that really grows on me. But it's the same thing. I love painting. I've always been a big painter, so I love painting.
Yeah.
But there's where I have a painting on my wall actually that is different shades of, but it's kind of like a sunset type vibe, and it's different shades of pinks and orange and purples and all of that. And so I didn't know what I wanted to put on it. So I only had this background. And sometimes my paintings will take me months. And I have this background. Well, one of my cats walked across it while it was still wet. So there is literally one paw print on that canvas with that background. I ended up leaving it, and it's up on my wall like that now. I ended up leaving it because I ended up not doing anything else with it. But it was one of those, what are you going to do with that? My kids, my husband, what are you going to paint with that? I'm like, I don't know. You just got to trust the process,
Mhm.
because it'll just come to you. You just got to trust the process. And then my cat walked across it, and I was like, that's the process. That's the process.
Easiest process ever.
Yep. So now it sits in my reading corner. I have a whole reading library corner that's got a bunch of art and my plants, and it's just kind of my little oasis there. And so that's, now it sits there, and it's one of those cute little pieces.
Oh my gosh, I love that. I have a room corner like this corner that you're seeing is the library plus a shelf or two, and the other half of the room is like office slash get ready with me. And I don't even film get ready. It's just a large vanity with
Yeah.
storage, and so it's like, I have my corner. It's really a room, and I can rearrange it, but I have my corner that I just disappear to when the husband decides he wants to play video games.
Yeah, my corner in our bedroom. So I've got my corner, and then the other half of it is, our bed and our, bedroom. So I had debated it this morning. I was like, I think I might sit in my corner, but I was like, no, my husband's sleeping, and I don't want him snoring because he sounds like a lawnmower when he snores. So I was like, I don't know. Let's just go sit in my car.
That's great. Oh my gosh. So, on the form of like library, do you prefer, are you like a physical girly, a Kindle girly, a mix? And then, like, how do you decide what you actually put in your library and what goes on your wish list?
So I am a specifically paperback physical book girly. I I will read a hardback book, but if it's up to me and I have the preference, I will not touch a hardback book. Um, and Kindles, I've read Kindle books before, um, but I can't connect with them in the
Mm,
same way that I do with a paperback book or even a hardback book. I don't want to, discredit hardback books at all, but um, there's just something about a hardback book. I can't get comfy with the book when
yeah.
I just can't get comfy with it. You got that awkward, you got to hold it like this type thing, or you have to have it set down on a table, and the pages are usually kind of really stiff. It's a whole thing. And sensory wise for me, it's not a go. But Kindle books, you know, they're convenient and they're great. Um, so when I'm especially in a pinch, if I've like accidentally forgot my book and I'm in a, waiting room or something, I'll, do a Kindle thing. But I just can't connect the same way that I can with a paperback. So
Mm,
I'm always paperback. Um, and I feel like I'm one of those people where I gravitate more towards psychological thrillers than anything else, but I'm always open to
yeah.
read books. So I'll, especially if they're books that are recommended by other people. I love recommended books. If someone's like, "Hey, I read this book and it made me think of you. I think you should read it and you should give it a shot." I'm like, "Okay, great." And I'll read it because it feels like there's a personal connection there. Like I want to know, okay, so what was it about this book that made that person think of me, specifically make them think that I would like this book? Like I want to find that in the book kind of thing. Um, but I definitely, if I had to pick one genre, I would probably say a psychological thriller. But I've been dipping my toes into romance. Well, actually, I wouldn't say dipping my toe. I've been dipping my toes, trying to, anyways, into like the heavier romance,
Mhm.
um, smutty type ones. But I struggle with some of those um, because I need plot. And a couple of the ones that I have tried reading, I can't find the plot in them. So I can't I end up not finishing reading them because I can't find that plot. Um but yeah, and I definitely like my bookshelf. I have historical fiction, I have romance, I have my thrillers, I have uh self-help type books. I mean, I honestly I have enough of a range that probably just about anybody who has a specific genre could come in and take a book and find something that they would enjoy. Um, Now, as far as my wish list is 110% influenced by everybody.
I
uh,
feel like that's kind of the case for a lot of people.
Yeah, it's a very judge a book by its cover scenario on my wish list. I will go through, and it happens all the time because I'll go through other people's wish lists, and whether it be that I'm gifting a book or if I'm just taking a peek through because I like to see what other people are into. And, sometimes that's how you find some of your really good gems, is
Yeah.
through other people's wish lists and stuff. And so if I see a book cover and I'm like, oh, that looks like that's a great book, I'll be like, add it to my wish list. And, so my wish list is impressively long. Well, I did a clean out not too long ago because I got on Pango Books and just like,
Yes. Oh my gosh. That was one of my next questions. Like the used versus brand new. Like, I don't care if it's well loved by someone else. And Pango Books is like not sponsored at all, but it's a really easy way to find books for cheap.
Mhm.
And you're supporting someone else. Like, I know if you had a Pango Books, like, I'm giving you money to help with groceries for the kids or get the kids shoes or gas or like, I know it's going to someone. Whereas, like, I don't get that connection if I, like, obviously I know it goes to them, but like, I'm not directly like, it's me and you. I'm paying a corporation and then they're paying their people and I can't guarantee they're paying them all
it's
that
not,
great.
it's not as personable. Yeah, no. And
Yeah.
I love Pango Books, and honestly, I prefer used over new. I have plenty of new, because when I like if my mom or family members or something, they buy me books, they don't know the different resources available to buy used books. So typically they'll go to the big box bookstores, and they'll be like,
Mhm.
"Oh, hey, here's this, Merry Christmas, whatever." So I do have a lot of new, from, different avenues and stuff. But for me personally, when I go book shopping, like I'm going to the thrift stores, I'm going to Pango Books, I'm going to secondhand. Our local library, they have seasonal massive book sales. So
Mhm.
they sell books for $1. So I just go and I'll just, $20
Yeah.
bill, here you go. And and
Mhm.
I'll use, and I prefer a used book over new because you can kind of see the journey that book went through. Like, it's not just the journey of the story that's on the pages, but
Yep.
it's the journey that the book itself had gone through. Like, sometimes you have, like, to me, it's one of those, it adds character. It adds
Mhm.
character to the book, it adds character to the story. And for me personally, within reason, the more character that the book has, I personally feel like the better the book probably is.
Yep.
um I mean, and I say that in a way of like, I don't mean that if you pick up a book and the title page is half ripped off and there's page damages all over the place, like that just wasn't taken care of.
Yeah.
um but when you see a book that has the frayed edges, from
Mhm.
being open so many times, the spine might be a little bit, you know obviously it had been opened and closed a lot, the pages might have that really like airy, fragile feeling to them, but
Mhm.
they're gonna break when you flip the page. Like, to me, that tells me either the person who had the book has read it a lot, like several times, or it's gone through several different people, and there's a good story in that because it's been worth it to that many different people to read that book.
Oh yeah.
So that's kind of how some people do that little thing where they'll hold the books and they'll see how floppy the book is.
Mhm.
Love a floppy book. I love a floppy book.
Yes. The
Yeah,
only thing that concerns me is like after it gets read so long, it has to be rebind, and then once it's rebind, it's like it has a whole new adventure to go on. I'm like, it's so cute.
yeah. I'm gonna move locations really quick because my husband's starting his truck so he can go to work, and he's got one of those. Hello.
That's crazy. So, do you have any like reader eggs? Like, because a lot of people that are like, oh, I don't like folded in like page when you fold the page or like writing in books. A lot of people are offended by that.
So yeah, dog ears don't really bother me. One of the things that does bother me is this, where it's got this
Oh,
did thing, and that kind of bugs me. Or the short book covers, the ones that have like that short. You gotta go. Yep. Okay, I hope you have a good day. I love you. Can I have a kiss? Okay. I love you. Bye. I'll see you later. Okay. Um, yeah, shortened book titles is or not shortened book titles, but like the book covers. Um, I don't understand why they're like that, and so it bothers me because it's not equal with the page. Like, it,
Yeah. What's the point? I think I have the new Walmart edition of Crave that's in paperback is like that. And it's like little, it's like no bigger than my pinky, but it's just a little bit of space and it's like the cover stops.
I just
Like,
don't. I can't think of which book it is. I think it might be this one. But I don't. No, it's not that one. But I don't. Anyways, I don't like it because the ones that I've seen, it's like the title page is shortened, but then they have like this sliver. It's like a whole another page behind it, and it'll be like New York bestseller. Okay, I didn't need you to shorten the title page to tell me that it was a bestseller. You could have put that somewhere, anywhere on the cover of the book.
literally anywhere else that hundreds of other authors do. Like,
It doesn't
please stop.
book any more unique. Like what's inside the book makes it unique, not
Yeah,
not the way that that cover is.
for real.
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, no, that's a pretty big ick for me. I'm trying to think. I don't really have. I mean, I don't have a ton of icks. There are some of the icks that I do have. They're icky, for me, anyways. But like, oh, the way that some people, the way that some romantic scenes are described,
Oh, yeah.
that's one that gets me sometimes. I can't remember what book it was, but it's always stuck with me. It's so gross and it like makes me feel so awkward. But it's creamy folds.
Oh, no.
Yeah,
No.
yeah, and it was terrible. I was like, why? We are not
For
like you're describing a bagel or something. Like it's not food, you know. I don't, and like
real. Ew.
it,
I will never look at bagels the same again.
I know I just did that to myself too. I was like, oh, why did you say that?
That's fantastic. But no, like for me, it's I don't have a whole lot of like icks as far as like I don't mind a dog-eared page. Like if you want to even like I've seen some kids like fold a page in half and I'm like, oh, whatever, I don't care. Like I'm not a fan of crack spines, but I can deal with them if it's like a well-loved book. Now, if it's a brand new book and you like intentionally crack that book, I'm like, that makes me hurt because it's
Yeah,
you're at that point you're not it's not like the book is well taken care of. It's like you're damaging it.
yeah.
Like you're not letting it get used. It's one of the
There's
and somebody's probably going to be upset about that. I don't care because I'm like it's you're not
it's so
it's not the same.
there's I've seen TikToks where people have taken the book and they're like, I guess their whole premise on it is that it's supposed to make the book easier to read, and
Mhm.
book and they'll open it down the middle, and then they'll like keep opening and press
Oh, yeah.
to break the spine, and I'm like, okay, like I do get that because there is this whole thing for me when I hold a book, like it's got to be comfortable in my hands,
Mhm.
but I can't. I don't know. I There's never been a book that I've taken and I've intentionally like, you're going to sit this way for me. I've just
Yeah. So stiff spine. I'll take like a couple pages and bend the pages over so that it the not the actual spine but above where the actual page bends so that it reads easier and holds easier. But as
yeah,
far as like actually folding it all the way sorry. And folding it all the way and flattening it and then pulling the pages, I'm like that just defeats the purpose of having a binding.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Because okay, so like this book, this is this is actually my most. I am so nervous to read this book, because it's so big. But
Oh,
this one, it's Stephen King's Under the Dome. But like this book, so it's got over 1,000 pages in it.
it looks like it's trained by like pages rather than just like cracked.
Yeah, so it's like, see, okay, so like this is perfect.
Yep.
This is perfect. So like with this, I'm like, okay, that's great because it's used, so it's obviously already kind of gotten that use out of it. But like the brand new books that don't have that already on them, I'm like, I'm trying to, well, all my red books are out on my other bookshelf, but like, okay, like this one, like initially this
It's
would not be
stiff.
that I would be super thrilled about because that's just not comfortable. But like for me, when I read a book, like I will take a book and like, I'll kind of do this
Hmm.
and then just kind of hang on to it. And like you can see when as I read along a book, like the pages I have gotten loosened versus the ones that are still like really tight in place. But yeah, but broken spines, I just like genuinely intentionally broken spines, not from use. It's definitely, I don't like seeing that. I have a couple of books that I got used that the spines are like just completely like in several different places, just cracked
Oh
up.
yeah.
I just my heart my heart hurts for it.
And I think that's the difference for me is like when it's well used, the spine is stretched more than actually broken. And it's like I've seen plenty of people that have like first edition Twilights and like first edition older books than even that, where the spine and like people are like, oh, we're rebinding for our own pleasure. No, you actually have to go in and legitimately rebind some of these books so that they actually stay together as a book and you're not losing pages. Because if you have something like a first edition Twilight or something like that, some of the first edition Stephen King's or something, it's one of those like you have a valuable set on your hands
Yeah,
and you're letting it just getting irreparably damaged.
yeah. I just don't understand. I mean, if it's, I could see the whole, well, it's my book. Okay, yeah, no, I get that, but
Mhm,
like but I guess it also just boils down to like for me personally, like I have books. My entire library is open to, my closest friends. I don't just let anybody come and borrow my books because I want to make sure that you're my book back and it's not going to be completely and totally destroyed. Like if it's got you enjoyed the book and you well loved it, I'll be able to know the difference between that versus if you bring my book home and it smells like your cat peed on it, you know, that kind of situation. But like I do have a couple of books, Lucy Score's Knock 'em Out series, like that
mhm,
particular. That's one that I don't lend out because I have the very last one is a signed copy. So it's like my completed series. So that one I don't. My Wildflower series, those covers are just absolutely gorgeous. And so
mhm.
I read Binks. Oh my God, my cat just tried attacking my hand. I'm sorry. Um, so I my the Wildflower series, like I don't lend that one out because I read those and I was like super anal about how I read those books so that way the covers wouldn't get ruined. So I do have a couple where I'm kind of stingy and just like, no, that one, those aren't like because I don't
Yeah.
want to, my level of care for my books is different from other people. So I don't
Mhm.
want to set the expectation that you're going to bring my book back and it's going to look like it was never read. So I just don't lend those ones out. I just tell people, sorry, those ones are not, they're not.
Yeah.
But everything else is fair game.
For real. No, I have a couple friends who have come in and that was before I put my chair back here so you could actually like see everything. And they were like, "Oh my gosh, you've got so much." And I've got one shelf that's still majorly empty, waiting on readers takeover. But um, they came over here and were looking at some of my Elsie Silver books because I have what I believe is the original print with the people on them. They're out of print for sure. I'm not sure if they're originally the original print, but I have the actual human covers instead of the flowery ones that are being sold now. And she was like, I've been wanting to read that series so bad. And I was like, with all love that I have in my body, like, you'll have to get those from someone else because those are out of print and I can't let myself give them to someone, especially when I know because you are a friend and I've been over to your home, you don't take care of your things the same way that I do. And for me, it's like I want you to be able to read them, yes. And maybe if I hadn't seen what I peeped, like I might have, but now I'm like, these are my babies. Like
Yeah.
I have no children. I have dogs. So these are my babies. This is what I do when I'm not 8 to 5
Yeah.
working.
No, I feel that though, because I definitely, I mean, I relate to that so much because I like my books. It sounds probably crazy, and I'm sure I'm sure people will be like, "Oh, you're a little bit crazy then with your when it comes to your books." But like, I genuinely sometimes have like this fear of um like if I run out of stuff to read. Like what am I going to do if I run out of stuff to read, or if something happens to all my books? Like I would be crushed if something happened to all my books. And one of the things that recently happened here locally is one of the counties, a neighboring county, they banned they banned a dictionary, Webster's dictionary. Um, and I was like, this is crazy. That's crazy to me. And then like a dictionary. How are you going to ban that? And so I just started getting, hi Sally, it's one of my cats. Um, so I was like, what all these different things that are just ridiculous that are being banned, and I'm like, what happens the day if I were to get, you know, something to get banned? Like, what if I'm just not allowed to read one day? Girl, get your butt.
Mhm.
If I'm just not allowed to read one day, and so I don't know, I get these weird, because like I said earlier, it's an escape for me, so if you take that away, I mean, yeah, like I talk to my therapist, I have my therapist, that's cool and all, but my therapist can't give me what these books have given me.
Mhm.
And so a lot of the times, a lot of these books, they've given me hope, they've given me, courage, they've given me outlooks on different things. Like one of the authors that I really, really love, and she's so controversial with people, but Colleen Hoover, um,
Mhm.
I really do love her books because, yeah, a lot of her books have that controversial, where people are like, oh, she glorifies this or this,
XYZ. Yeah.
but it's like, okay, I can see where you're coming from on that, but to me, it's not that she's glorifying it. I feel like it's a different perspective of, you know, you're recognizing things. Like there's been times where I've read books from her and I'm like, oh, my best friend's boyfriend is just like this. And it gives you the perspective that you may not have actually seen in real life. Like it lets you relate to something and kind of, so like so her books I really do enjoy because it's like, not only is it good, they're good books, but it's kind of eye-opening in a sense because you get to see it from a different light where you wouldn't have if I would have never read that book, I would have never seen it.
Yeah.
So
And the thing is like knowing that we have people who hate on her so much and they hate on Sarah J. Maas and all of these people who have huge platforms for writing, dozens of books. And I'm like, they're doing it. You know, I understand, like, I'm not the biggest fan of Colleen Hoover. I'm not going to hate you for that. She's just not for me. I am not fond of her writing style. It just is what it is.
yeah.
And I prefer much darker content. So, like, I'm like, that's it. Like, I'm not even worried about it being controversial. Like, I'm just like, that's it. I need more. Where is the, like,
Well, and I feel like that's the big thing too, is like I've seen people in different, in different social platforms that are, bookish people. And I feel like, if I had to add, if it could count as an ick, I feel like two of the biggest icks would be when people are at bookstores and they flip an author's book on the bookshelf. To me,
Mhm.
that's so incredibly disrespectful because it doesn't matter, and I'll probably catch heat for that, and that's fine. It doesn't. It's my opinion, so that's totally fine. But, um, it's just disrespectful in general. Like you wouldn't go to an art show and you wouldn't flip someone's painting over because you don't like looking at it. So you don't like reading a person's book. Okay, that's fine.
Mhm.
You can walk right past it.
Mhm.
But to be at the end of the day, that's still someone's hard work. That's still someone's time and effort that they put into it, and that's still somebody's like courage and dignity and faith that they put out there that this book isn't going to be a flop.
For
And so,
sure.
to me, that's like I would never walk up to somebody's painting and flip it backwards because the blue didn't mesh well with the yellow, and that's just it doesn't. It's just it's a big ick to me. But I think another one would also be the hate that people will give on somebody over who they choose to read. Like,
Mhm.
because I've seen people who are like, oh, you read this person, so you must support this. No, not necessarily. I
Nope.
could I could read a book about something that is completely unrelated to who I am as a person. But the reasoning on why I read that book won't doesn't necessarily align with my beliefs or what I like. I'm a
Yep.
very open-minded reader, and I'm not into dark romance type stuff. But from people that I've talked with who have talked about certain books, I'm like, hey, I'm willing to give it a shot though. I'm willing
Mm-hmm.
to see what it's about because some of the stuff you talk about that comes out of that book sounds really good, you know? So it's definitely I wish that people weren't so judgmental about the things that people choose to read because it doesn't always align with who they actually are.
Yeah. I I I get so upset because I'm like, okay, you're looking at first of all social media and it's like film essentially that you have because you only see portions of people or portions of what they've got going on, etc. Especially when you get into Bookstagram and Book Talk and Facebook groups because for me personally, and I've said this before, I get a little bit like I feel like it's easier to connect to people in a Facebook group than it is through Book Talk or Bookstagram or any other platform. Like Threads is great. Don't get me wrong. And I've been like connecting more there than I have Book Talk or Bookstagram. But between those two, I feel like Bookstagram is like if you don't have a certain aesthetic or you don't have an aesthetic to your page, which I finally do. But when I didn't, I felt like it was like some sort of stigma.
Mm-hmm.
You can't.
So like they get zoomies and chase each other on like a regular basis. So sometimes they'll crash into stuff, and I'm like, oh,
But, like, on Book Talk, I feel like because for me, I get nervous trying to create reels because they're not dancing reels, like, because I don't and if I wanna show and edit reel, like, with pictures and words versus, like, my face, even though I'm doing this, but, like, if I wanna do that instead of do my face, like, it doesn't get as much traction, like, if you're not sticking to the same sort of content regularly, it's not pushed. It's not that people aren't watching it, but it's not pushed
yeah,
because you don't have this stigma about you because it doesn't match whatever society
yeah,
or what the people who run those systems think society wants. And that's the thing. It's not even necessarily what we actually want. It's what they think we want or what they want us to want.
yeah,
Which don't even get me started on that part, but
yeah. That
like that's a whole conspiracy theories not happening, but I
yeah,
do feel like there is that sort of stigma, and for me, the interaction is low as well. Like, if I'm posting on my Bookstagram, I set up my grid to be like 3 stacks, 3 Kindles, 3 physical, stack, physical, Kindle, stack, like, it's set up like that on my grid. I like it, I do it for me, because I like to see the pictures of the books or, of the Kindle, like, what I'm reading, what I've got in my library. And if you pay close attention to the grid, all of the pictures are in front of my library, but you can see the difference in when I took the picture because the library gets rearranged in the background.
yeah,
So, and it's not just the books, it's like the shelving order too. So I'm
I,
like, if somebody's actually paying attention, they're going to know that, like, this was really not done. Because, a lot of people, and there's no hate to anyone who does this, because if it's what brings them joy, then I'm like, go for it. But a lot of them use the same background for every single picture. And while it's the same background, there are minute details that are different, like the book order, the bookshelf order, and the book order. Like, it changes a lot because well, I'm ADHD and a little bit ADD and kind of just a little psycho here. And
yes,
everything and everything changes like every other weekend.
yeah, yeah. My so my bookshelf currently because I'm I'm always like, oh, I want to see what this vision looks like, with my books. And so I actually right now currently, um, you can tell that I was in a very high motivated state when I started, and see exactly where I lost that motivation because because I've got portions of it that look really neat and really cool, and then there's this other one where everything's just kind of thrown up there, like I just had to put it somewhere, and so I'm waiting for that motivation to come back so I can finish my book.
Well, and like for me, I have like a little Stitch moon lamp on one of them, and then I have like a little um I don't even know what to call it. It looks like it's a decoration, kind of like this, but it's a square. And you just set it on there. I don't know what to call it, but I have a couple of those, and then I have this one here that's themed around these books. And so I'm like, I don't have much for actual shelf decoration aside from the book. And although I want it to be filled up with the books, that's the whole intention behind it. I also want to put really cute stuff on it without completely blocking. And I don't have enough of that. So I'm like, it's just chaos.
Yeah.
It's like whatever I can fit on the shelf for now. And then once I get to a point where I feel like I have enough decorations, I'm satisfied, then maybe yeah, I don't
Yep.
know.
It For me, it's an ever evolving thing. Like I always, my mom actually she found this and she's like, oh, I thought about your bookshelf.
That's cute.
And so I was like, okay, but it's got like this massive hole in the front or on the top of it. She's like, I don't know what it's supposed to be, but it's got a plug at the bottom. So I think it's supposed to be a pot for like a plant or something. So I was like, maybe I'll just stick a plant in there. I don't know, but it's definitely, I mean, it's cute. I was like, okay, that's cute. But I've got so many random little knickknacks and stuff. People will be like, oh, I thought of your bookshelf. I'm just like, oh, thanks. So everything
Same.
on my shelf is stuff that people brought me because they were like, hey, I thought of your bookshelf. Um, so that's kind of where all my little things and like,
Okay, so some of them came from like book boxes, um, like a lot of like crystals or like a jar of mini crystals or um a coffee mug or a little wand, and then a shot glass from my first ever like local book convention signing thing. It's a local one, so there were only like 25, 30 authors there, and they were local to my area. But I got a shot glass from them, and then I have a couple of different ducks because Jeep culture. I
yeah,
don't drive a Jeep, but Jeep people give out ducks. So, um, and then I have a little skull that my friend Kelly did in resin, which is really cute. It's got one day I'll get it down, but it's like way up there. And then the two bottles that I made. And that's like they just sit on the top of the big shelves and I haven't brought them down. I'm
yeah,
like, I don't know if I want all of that in the middle of this chaos right now because I have not decided how I want my books organized. And
yeah.
it's going to change regularly.
Yep. I don't think I've ever actually kept. Well, this has been probably the longest I've kept my books the way that they are. It's, but like I have some of them where I have the back of them, they're all lined up and everything. And I have this thing where sometimes, okay, so like this is a prime example. This shelf right here, sometimes sometimes I have them where they're all the same size, like the same height. But then I have like moments like this where I could just care less. Know what book was supposed to be there. I'm not sure. But then like if you I don't can you see I'm trying to so like this, I have them where they're like set up all neat. So you have books stacked up behind
Yeah.
and you have them like just some of them displayed. So like that was my current moment right there. But it stopped because the very top shelf here I just have it stacked up. So so uh, it's
I'm like, it is what it is.
that's right. That's just how the cookie crumbles on that one. But I mean, it's cool though because I had so many different books and I just started stacking them all up, and then I was like, no, I want them to be. organized by genre. But then I was like, okay, but I have a book that has a lot of romance in it, but it's also suspenseful. So would I classify it as a suspense book, or would I classify it as a romance? So then you have those books where I'm like, I don't know. So I just now it just kind of, if I know for no, this is a romance author,
Hmm.
this is where it goes.
I was about to ask, like, what do you think when you get into those situations? Like, which plot line do you go with? Do you go with like which one's bigger as far as like the theme for romance as in the genre? Like, or do you kind of 50-50 it?
I Okay, so I'll use call. Okay, so Verity,
Mhm.
Colleen Verity, that one I feel like is a perfect example because Colleen is known as a romance writer. But that particular book, she really branched herself out there, and that was a whole like suspense, psychological twist on that book. Um, to me personally, there was so much more psychological plot twists in that book that it would be, for me personally, I would have classified that as a psychological suspense type of book. However, she herself is a romance author, so I grouped that book with her other romance books because I think it was more of a eyesore for me to stick that one book with all these other psychological books when her name like it was a it was more of a visual type thing
Yeah.
for anything else. But like if I do, when people are like, hey, I want something that's got some romance to it, but it's suspenseful, or kind of gets your gears going and stuff, like I'm always like, hey, check this book out, because I mean it's got a lot of triggers in there, but it hits the markers that it does hit some of those markers. It was kind of a heavy read for me because it was, first of all, it was the first Colleen Hoover book I'd ever read. um and I had read it because I started seeing a bunch of hype on it, but I didn't realize the triggers that were in it. So as I was reading it, I was like there were a couple times I had to put the book down because I was like, wait, that, like, I wasn't expecting that, and that was really intense. But it was also, I mean, it was just one of those books where I was like, whoa, like that's crazy. And there were a couple times where I actually physically reacted to what I was reading. And my husband would be like, you okay? And I'm like, yeah, no, that scared me. I wasn't thinking, I wasn't expecting that. But like Natasha Preston, she's another one that I like all of her books. I Cliffhangers. Cliff
Mm.
I love hate with cliffhangers. Um because I need closure. I am a person that needs closure. But I also like the fact that her books kind of leave that opening for you to kind of come up with
Did
your,
it happen? Did it not happen? I don't even know. For me, it's like, is that even really a cliffhanger? Because they're rounding it out, but they're rounding it out in a way that you still have unanswered questions that don't have to be answered.
yeah.
Like, what happened to the sister?
Right.
Why is the dad doing this? Like, things that don't necessarily aren't 100% detrimental to the main storyline, but you're like, bro, you left pieces out.
Yeah, like I have so many questions. But those are also really cool though, like any book, not just her books, but like just any book that's like that, because I love having conversations with people who have also read that book, because I there is nothing that I love more than talking to somebody who has read the book and picking their brain about, like, okay, well, how did you interpret this? Or one book that's my absolute favorite is The Woman in Cabin 10. um and I absolutely love talking to people about that book, because all the time I'm like, oh my gosh, I didn't even notice that, you noticed that. um and it's one of those books where it's like you can really see how different people can read and interpret and visualize things, because
Mhm.
when you watch, like you had mentioned earlier, when you watch a movie, I mean, it's all given to you, it's all right there. And whether or not you see, the little hint, or you pick up on this, like that's solely based on whether or not you're paying attention to the movie.
Disney.
Yeah.
Disney. Hello. I'm like,
But
how many times do I have to rewatch the same movie before I figure out that there was like hidden Mickeys in the background or like characters from when a story what like the fact that the new Lightyear movie is the movie in Toy Story 1 that has him going to buy the Buzz Lightyear action figures. Like
oh my god,
that's yeah.
it's stuff like that, stuff like that. And then, like, in a book, you don't have the visual right there in front of you that it's given to you, to where
Mhm,
you can't. It's not so. I mean, granted, in some of these movies that you watch, it's not always easy to pick up on those things. But regardless of whether how easy it is or not, it's right in front of you.
mhm,
And it's handed to you and it's given to you. Whereas in a book, like, you're reading a book, but you're going to be focused on, you know, one detail, whereas another person is going to be focused on this other detail. So when you get to have that interaction with somebody about that book, you know, it's kind of one of those cool things where you kind of get that full circle moment, where you get to have that moment with that person, over something that you both have connected over, but you also get that full circle moment with the book in itself,
mhm.
which I, but again, I'm just one of those in big readers where it's like, I see it's not just a book. Like, there are people who read. My husband, when he reads, it's like it's just a book to him. Like, it's just a book, But for me, it's like, no, it's so much more than that, because a book is a book, yes. But I am a person, I've got to talk about that book and I got to share it with somebody. But it's not as fun to talk about that book if you're talking about it with somebody who's never read the book.
Yeah,
You know, because that interaction, it's no different than, oh man, that was a great movie. What'd you think of the movie? It's the same thing. It's the same thing.
for sure. For sure. So, what have you been reading recently? I like to ask people this question because I need all the recommendations I can get.
Okay, so I recently, I have done a couple of the buddy reads. Um, so for February, I did Heartbones, and I've been trying to get into Twisted Love, um, but I put that one down for a little bit because I'm kind of, I think I've burnt myself out on romance for the very moment. So I need a change of scenery. So I'm currently reading a book called An Honest Lie. The Honest Lie. Oh God, it's out there. It's An Honest Lie, and I just recently started. I'm only on like chapter 3. Binks. I think I'm only on like chapter 3. Um, but that's I haven't quite. So okay, full disclosure here. I am a person who I do not preface a book. I've
Mm,
So majority of the time I go into reading a book not having a clue what it's about, other than what the book cover is. So that's kind of what I did with this one. So I don't really know what it's about, but it's pretty good so far. There's definitely something brewing. I can see that without any spoilers. It's definitely something brewing. The cover of the book is really cool, um, because she's sitting in a pool and she's like chilling, but then like in the background there's like this airplane that's reflecting off of the pool. So there's like that mystery there already as it is on the
mm.
front. So I don't know. We'll see. Um, but I am, after I finish with that one, I'm gonna try and see if I can pick up Twisted Love again and see if I can try and get back into that one. But um, for the March Movie Madness, I'm doing the Summer I Turned Pretty book, and I have all the books in that series. So I might end up doing like a series binge on that and start that. So I'm really excited about that.
Yes. For anyone who doesn't know, March Movie Madness and what was February's? February is
Uh,
Fall in Love February, I
yes.
believe. Is a book club hosted by the Facebook group, The Bookmark Journey. So it's the Bookmark Journey Book Club. That's what we're talking about. And we do the themes each month changes, or they do, depending on who it's leading it. But so yeah, I was really that's a lot of fun though. I tried the first one. I audioed The Summer I Turned Pretty and it was okay.
Yeah. I'm
I was
nervous
like,
about
it's okay.
I'm nervous about it because I've heard that the show series of it's really good, but I've also heard mixed like so I haven't watched the series. I'm big on that. If I know that it's a book, I will not watch
Hmm.
show or whatever it is because I feel like it ruins it for me because it puts that visual in my head, not the
Yeah.
visual I want to create or that the book creates for me. So I'm really, really big on that. So I haven't watched the series on that, but I may or may not read it. There was what's that? It's a real. It's was it Netflix? I think it's a really long title, for a Netflix series. It's got Kristen Bell in it. It's the woman in the window. It's like the woman in the window across the street. Something.
Oh yeah.
Um, I can't remember the name because the title of the show is just so incredibly drawn out and long. But ultimately, it's about Kristen Bell's character who loses her family, and due to her losing her family they get into a car accident because it's raining, and she ends up having this phobia of rain, but she thinks that she witnessed the man across the street from her house murdering people in the house. It's this whole crazy thing, and so she basically becomes obsessed with sitting in front of her window watching her neighbor while she's drinking wine and mixing that with sleeping pills, and it's a whole thing. So everyone's like, no, you're just hallucinating because you're mixing all of these things. Well, I didn't realize that it was a book. I had watched it because it reminded me of a book title that I had seen on my bookshelf and realized that
Mm.
it was based off of that book. So I went to go read that book and I couldn't anymore. I couldn't anymore. So I had to put the book away because it completely ruined it for me. Um, so I try my best not to watch stuff before I read. I'd rather read and then watch.
Yeah. I watched and then read for the Hunger Games, and I watched the Twilight movies growing up. I even went to the midnight release of the Breaking Dawn Part 2. But and I haven't got myself to actually read the books yet. And I feel like the cases it's almost always this way, but like the books are typically better. And for something that was already pretty great the way that they made it, especially when you're looking at the Hunger Games, like those movies were outrageous. Like they were all the work and they still are. That's what everyone like those are the movies along with the Divergent series. So it was like going back and reading them. Some people felt cheated because they read them first and certain things were left out, which is how it typically goes whenever they make movies or TV shows out of stuff. But going back and looking at all of the stuff that they missed, they didn't put in, or they changed, it was like for me, I was able to go, okay, that's not exactly how it happened. And the character is described a little bit differently from what the actor like the actor who was chosen, but I can see why. But at the same time, I'm like, have that's not exactly how I pictured it or how I can picture it, but it's like merged into something of the two. But I had this appreciation for what like I learned a new appreciation for what authors do and having to either give up the rights to make the film or the movie or they have them and they're just paid for 'em, whatever the case may be. But I haven't the new appreciation for what they do as far as writing because I'm like I would have never like the way that things are described and then trying to put it into film.
Yeah.
Like the appreciation of like the creative minds having to come together and really think about, oh, well, it was described this way. So how can we get some
Yeah.
of them are like, how can we get it close?
Yeah, I do think that it would be so neat to be able to watch how that, when they're casting people, like,
Yeah.
you have this person that's been described as this, but how, what are the moving parts that ultimately get you to this person being selected? Like, what is it? Is it the physical features? Is it the mannerisms? Is it the facial expressions? Like, what is it exactly that, made you guys go, this is that person? Like,
Mhm.
I, I think it's always so neat how, because when you look at the Hunger Games, for me personally, I don't know that I could envision anybody other than Jennifer Lawrence.
Yeah.
Because she fits that character so well. Like, Katniss, like that's her. Like, she has embodied that so well. That it's but that entire cast, like, they really did great on that
Yeah.
cast. The Twilight series, I actually never read the Twilight books. I watched the movies, but I never actually, so if I were to go back and read the books, I probably wouldn't be able to envision anybody different, just because that's what was presented to me to begin with. But
Hmm.
the Divergent series, I actually have that series on my shelf here, and I've never seen the movies and I've never read the books. So I do plan on reading the books first and then watching the series, the movies, on that, just to kind of compare the two. But, like, that's what I'm really excited about with that, because I haven't watched the movies, but I'm familiar with, some of the faces just through scrolling on social media and little snippets and stuff like that of the movies. But um I'm really curious to see if what I envision with that lines up with who was cast on that. It's stuff like
Yeah.
that. It's always really cool to see, um, how that, like, kind of comes together.
Yes. And for me, like thinking about the Hunger Games, like, what is his name? Now that I think about it, I cannot. The Is it a Hemsworth brother that plays
Oh,
Gale?
Liam?
Yes. Okay. So I would not have envisioned exactly him as Gale, but like that's the closest that I could see
Yeah.
for that character. I'm like, yeah, definitely Jennifer Lawrence. Like the way that she can just so easily like get into Katniss and just kind of be like this level, steady personality. And if you look into like personalities and how that works, those are the peacemakers, the number or not the yeah, the peacemakers, the number nines. They're really quiet. And so yeah, like the way that she can do that, but her actual personality is very much like happy-go-lucky, bubbly, life, like kind of party person. Like I love seeing the videos of her on the red carpet where she's like plastered and she's just like, yeah, like yes, girl, live your best life. But I'd see like for PETA, I got like the facial features and the height is there, but I was expecting more like in the body build.
Yeah.
Like, for a baker's body, you've got a broad chest and a larger set of shoulders in my mind. So I was like, this doesn't quite fit. Like, you're close. Again, you're close, but you're not quite there. And I feel like that's exactly what you were talking about earlier. Like sometimes you can get as close as you can get, but then you're like, it's missing things.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. Like, I definitely, it's always, because you obviously, what the person envisions, like, you would have to do some type of AI something, like, really just
Yeah.
truly spot on with, all those things. But I think it's just, in general, the way that it all comes around and to this massive piece of art where these people, it makes you appreciate their talent in being able to form themselves into that character. But it's also really neat that the author who ultimately came up with that character was able to create that person.
Mhm.
So it's always so neat to be able to see how that how it all comes around, just because, I mean, I've started writing a book a few months back, but, like, I have been on such a it's my first book that I've ever tried to write. So, first of all, I'm clueless. Uh Second of all, like, my biggest struggle with that has been the development of the characters in the book. Like, I have the storyline in my head. I know what I want to write about. I know what I want ultimately all of this to become, but how do I get there? You know,
Mhm.
that's the part where it's like it gives you that whole, you know, realm of that. It's a whole nother level of creativity that you have to tap in and find.
Yeah.
Um, I would really love to see the Knock 'Em Out series become a movie, though.
Mm. Okay, I'm gonna be honest. I haven't read all three. I have the first one and I've started it, but my ADD and ADHD are like squirrel so quickly. So I end up reading like 10 to 12 books at a time, which somebody's gonna be like, oh my gosh, that's a lot. And it is. It really is. And I get asked all the time, how do you keep up with them? Like the different stories and everything. And I'm like, it, it's my little bit of tism, but I'm like, it's just me. But it's because I can do different. Typically, I try to follow different genre depending on what format I'm reading. So, if I'm doing romance in audio, I can't normally read a romance physical because then I have the medium of what I'm using helps me differentiate a little bit more. But most of the time I can just be like, "Oh, that's this character, it's this book and this is kind of where it's gone." Now, I end up having to I started the things we the first one. It's I can't. They're all named so similar, but I started the first one and I got in and I was like, "Hello, tension, please give me the tension." And then I was like, "Crap, I got to read for work." So we're reading "Think Again" by Adam Grant. So it's one of those you really because it's a business book club, you have to really pay attention sometimes. And I'm taking notes, this is how that made me feel. But yeah, I got started on them and I have an idea of just from the tension alone, I have an idea of what the characters this tall, burly, just gruff
Yeah.
cowboy hat. Cowboy hat and
I would absolutely love to see Miles Teller be on a rom com, or not even a rom com, but just like some type of bookish book movie. You know, what's his name? I don't know. Sydney Sweeney. Sweeney, say, what's her name? Sydney Sweeney.
yeah.
What's the guy's name? He was the guy that was he was the antagonist on the new Top Gun Maverick. He's got the
Uh
line.
yes, yes,
Uh,
yes. I know who you're talking about.
the two of them are in that movie where they like pretend to like each other and then they actually end up
Mhm.
with each other. I cannot think of his name, but like he is one that I didn't realize that I would have would have thought him to be in a bookish related movie until I saw the previews for that If Only You or whatever that movie is that her
Mhm.
and Sweeney are in. But Miles Teller I feel like would be Chef's Kiss.
Yes.
I just I he's but his little face, his cute little face just
Mhm.
has my heart though. Every time I see it, I'm like
Mm. Hello, thank you.
Footloose days when he was a little dorky kid on the Footloose remake. I've always loved his
Honestly.
um
For me, that's Charlie Hunnam from Sons of Anarchy, who plays
oh
Jax.
yeah.
And I'm like, that man, anytime okay, so my husband's a biker, so I'm not I'm I have a thing, okay? That's why I said dark romance, mafia MC style, like extremely morally gray. He's not in a club, but he's a biker and he's one of those I lean more towards the morally gray for most people. He's just that person, but that man looks similar, not my husband's shorter than him, but it's one of those that's kind of the vibe that my husband gives. So I'm like, if anytime I read an MC or anytime someone's average build man with a broad shoulders and blonde hair with a beard, and I'm like, boy, I
Yes.
married that.
There's nothing that I than when I stumble across a book that puts the visual of my husband in my because then I'm like, oh baby.
Let's get it.
Oh man, like this is about to be good. I absolutely love it. But it's also cool too when you come up with these different visuals of other people because you're like, yeah. There was a what do they call it? The Bailey brothers. It's oh shoot. what the first one's called Protecting You, and then the
Mhm.
second one I read was called Fighting for Us. I can't remember the author, of course, because I want to talk about it, so I can't. But the series is called the Bailey Brothers series, and she's a romance writer, and the like there's like six or eight books in that series.
Mm.
I get past the second one though because the so it's a lot like the Knock 'Em Out series where each book focuses on a specific character in the full storyline. And so the first two books were about this specific couple, and then all the books after that are about the other brothers. And I just could not get connected with the other brothers. I couldn't picture them in my head. I couldn't, so I ended up not reading any further than the second book because I just didn't have the interest in knowing the rest of their stories. It's kind of a bummer, but at the same time I was like, well, it happens. It happens. But like the Wildflower series, there is another one where I like his what I picture in my head. I'm just like, oh man. I'm like that's yeah.
There are some of those that I'm just like, yeah, that'll do it.
Yep.
That'll do it.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. But then there's that I'm nervous about to read because I'm like, I don't know if it's gonna like the L Kennedy's one that the L Kennedy books that I have up here. Um, those ones they've been sitting up there for so long because I'm scared. Because I just don't. I've heard so much about them, but then I'm like, I've got L Kennedy up here. I have uh, I I have Akatar up here that I
Hmm.
have not read yet. Um, I have the what series is this called? It's the Fine Print and Terms and Conditions.
Oh, Billionaire Dreamland.
Yes, I have that one in there. So like I have a couple in here where like
Or Dreamland Billionaire.
you can see where my curiosity lies.
Hmm.
But huh? Baby, it's 9:15. It's breakfast time. It's not dinner time. Oh, because you fell asleep. Your dumplings. They're out there. In the I think they should be in the fridge.
Good morning.
He's he's our fun one. He he has massive severe ADHD and has massive sleeping trouble. So the night before he didn't get to sleep until like 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. So we had to go to school. We had to do our normal day. So by the time that we got home yesterday, he crashed when we got home. So he ended up sleeping through dinner, slept through the whole thing. So sometimes he'll wake up in the morning and he's like, "Hey, what's for dinner?" Not realizing that it's the next
He's
day.
been yeah.
Yeah.
Poor thing.
But yeah.
I'm the same way though. I have a lot of like I have the I love Lorelai James. I have a couple of the start of her series back here that I haven't done. I have the Elsie Silver. I never actually finished that whole thing. I have I think it's called Off Campus L Kennedy.
Yes.
And I started Akatar, but then never got into Throne of Glass because I mean, look at it.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I have another one up here. It's honestly it was totally because I liked what the covers look like. I don't know what the series of them are, but it's
Oh,
the Blood and Honey, Gods and Monsters,
Serpent and Dove.
and then Serpent and Dove, or maybe it's
Yeah.
yeah, I got the order wrong. I don't know which one goes where, but the covers on these looked amazing. So I was like,
So
I don't
pretty.
know. This looks like something that I would really that I might be able to dabble in. So
Yes. I have that one too. I need to start it.
yes, dear. What's the matter?
I'm just cold.
You're just
My
cold.
finger right here hurts.
What'd you do to it? Oh, you got a little bug bite.
Oh.
I don't know what. Let's see. I'm trying to think. What would be your number one recommendation? Like if you had to pick one, you absolutely have to read it.
Oh, that's so tough. I'm like looking around here like which ones? Honestly, it's a romance. It's a MC romance. It's Emma Slate. The first one's called Wreck and Ruin, and
Okay.
the series is called the Blue Angels Motorcycle Club. But there are now 7 of them. I
Oh,
read the first 3, and they're really good. So it's like about the different characters in the actual club. But there is some suspense. There is some attempted murder. There is some actual murder. There is some kidnapping. There's a lot of different variables. But for me, it's just one of those I can always fall back on an MC just because, like, it is the closest to my regular lifestyle, but still not reality for me. Because in real life, a motorcycle club is not just I mean, it is nowhere near it's so romanticized. So romanticized. Like, my husband's talked to some guys who are in one, and they were like, "Yeah, you don't own your stuff. Like, your bike is not yours unless you log so many hours," or, like, just crazy rules. I'm like, "Please, this is great, but it's not real."
oh, don't ruin it. Yeah. Well, so I work at a fire department, my local fire department, and it's so funny because I'll talk to people who have that, like, that's their niche. Um, and they're like, give me all the firefighter books, give me all the things, and I'm like, I can't. I can't read anything. That was actually one of the things that caught me off guard with the Bailey Brothers series. I didn't realize that they were like firefighters. That was like
Yeah.
their chosen career, and all that. And I didn't realize that. So there was that part where I was like, I hope this doesn't turn into one of those like stereotypical type things, because then the whole time I'll be sitting there reading the book going, no, that's not that's not it. Which thankfully ended up not being like that. It was just the career that they wanted to be, so it was like lightly touched on. Uh but yeah, no, it's definitely one of those things where I'm like, if I feel like I can personally relate to it, I try to stay away from it because I don't want to sit there and nitpick it the whole entire time.
Mom,
Yeah.
Chinese, you should put your dumplings and your noodles in here and get a little bit of the sauce in here and then shake it.
Oh, shake it. Yeah, that's a good idea.
So, oh,
Well, go shake it out there so you don't get a big old mess all over the floor in here. And then don't. No, you're not eating that in here. You got to eat that out there. Sorry. I don't want sweet and sour sauce all over my bed. Um. So, okay. So if there was one book that you would say absolutely not, what would be that one book or series? I guess.
Mm. Do I have one? Like, absolutely not in real life, or like I won't finish it?
Like, won't finish it. Like, you wouldn't recommend it. You wouldn't finish it. Like, it's just you just couldn't. I have one. That's why I was asking, because I'm curious. I'm curious if I'm the only one that has one of those.
Okay, so one of my favorite authors actually wrote her take on the Hades and Persephone, and I'm just not gonna I'm just gonna leave it at that because I still love her other books.
Hmm.
But I that one book, it's for some reason like she does really well in her Lucifer retellings, like romanticized the devil and his plaything, that kind of thing. But the actual Hades and Persephone, um, it didn't work for me. Like, it just did not. I'm so stuck in my head on her angels and devils and not Greek that I can't. I'm like, this does not match for you.
Yeah. I think mine was more of a personal reasonings really than anything. I could not. I tried reading the Breathless trilogy. Um, was it the first one? I think was Rush. Rush was the first one. I tried reading that, and I couldn't finish it because I just couldn't find, like, I felt like the plot happened too fast, and then the rest of it
Mm.
just. I mean, it's a smutty book, so like that's it did exactly what it's supposed to be. but I struggled with it because majority of the time when I'm reading a book, it's usually like I'm around my kids. I'm around, like and I've got kids. I was trying to read this book and my daughter comes and sits right smack next to me and I'm trying to read this book and I look over and I'm like, I can't, like I can't. Well,
You can't read this.
yeah. I was like, I don't want to feel like I'm like blushing whenever somebody like I know what you reading. uh,
Mm-hmm.
but I struggled with that one because I could like he wanted her, he got her, and then the rest of it was just, you know, from there it was just like I could, every time I'd flip a page it was just a constant where I needed like storyline versus just a
Mm-hmm.
meet up type thing. But I don't think it was I just think maybe I tried cannonballing into a genre that I just hadn't really like I feel like I need to ease into because there's a couple of those books where I'm like, man, that just sounds like that'd be a real great time. But then I'm like,
I'm saying.
I get what's the ones? It's I saw it all over the place during Halloween time, and it was like the ghost face guy, melt for us, melt
Yes. Something
those.
like that.
I want to read those ones so bad because I had seen little teeny excerpts of it on TikTok and was like, oh, this just seems like it would be right up my alley. But then I'm like, but I can't even get through something like Rush. So if it's the same thing, I don't want to I don't
Yeah.
want it for myself, because in my mind, I haven't even read the Melt for Us and the Scream for Us ones, but it's so hyped up in my head that I'm like, oh, this is, but I almost don't want to ruin that hype. And I kind of want to like keep it because I feel like there's nothing worse than a book that you have so hyped and then you just come out of it and you're like,
Mm-hmm.
not quite what I thought it was going to be.
Yeah. So much. That happens so much. This has been such a good conversation.
Oh, I
I
really,
loved hanging.
really enjoyed it.
Yes, I loved hanging with you.
It was fun. Thank you for
Have
having
to come back. Yeah, no problem. We gotta get out of here. So,
me. Thank you. Thank
yes,
you.
ma'am.
Go eat dump for breakfast with my kid.
Yay!